Have you ever wondered why scenes like these are so gripping and powerful? Well, the use of color has a large part to play in that. But after we see clips like these, we sit back and we think, dang, I wish my shots looked like that. I'm gonna give you a bit of hope because they can, and it's not as hard as you think. I'm gonna tell you the 3 things that I focus on to achieving cinematic colors in my photos. Stick around at the end of the video because I'm gonna be showing you how I take a shot like this and make it look like it's a scene from The Dark Knight. So the first thing to focus on when achieving cinematic color grading within your images is to have a direction of where you wanna take your image. I mainly do this by having reference images and finding inspiration. But to know exactly how that image can be pushed, you need to examine the colors that already exist within your frame. You know, I would love to take a shot like this and make it look like this, but with the colors that are already in the scene, it wouldn't be very practical. There's a ton of inspiration out there, but I personally love going to films that have already crafted these perfect looks. One of the best websites I believe to pull inspiration from is a website called ShotDeck. It's amazing because they pull high quality stills from over 2,600 movies. Let me show you just how seamless this is. So this was an image that I had taken. It's still in its raw form, but I really want to push it more towards like a blue-orange look. And one of the films that I know pushes this kind of a look is The Dark Knight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search The Dark Knight. And then I'm gonna go over to the left panel, I'm gonna look under color, I'm gonna hit blue, and boom, this image I think would represent my image perfectly. What we're gonna do after the next 2 tips is we're gonna grade this raw image just like the still that I pulled off ShotDeck. So the second thing I do before diving into my color grade is I properly color balance my image. The reason why it's so crucial to have proper white balance from the start of your images is because when you have a properly balanced image, you're gonna have the true colors to manipulate without any fracturing. And then the third thing you do is you begin to shape your image by using color. And this kind of ties in with point number 1. As a photographer, it's our job to help the viewer to know exactly where they should be looking within the frame without having any confusion whatsoever. And this is way more vital as a photographer rather than video, because video you have more frames, but as a photographer, you have 1. If you look at a shot like this or this, where does your eye naturally want to go to? It's the parts that are generally more saturated. And why is that? Because the eye is more attracted to the parts in your image that are more saturated and less attracted to the spots that are less saturated. When we begin to implement these 3 things within our images, we can begin to craft images that are pleasing to the eye. So let's go into Lightroom. I'll show you how I implement all 3 of these things into my images to make a look just like The Dark Knight. Okay, so we got number 1 down. We picked our reference image, which is going to be this scene from The Dark Knight. So we're gonna create this look so we know exactly where we want to push it. And we're gonna take this image from this into this. So first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this image up as a reference. So I'm going to hit Shift plus R, and then that's going to bring up my reference so that I can get a really good side-by-side view. If I want, I can go down to this bottom tab here. I can click on that again, and it's just going to give me a different size of reference. And because it's a wide aspect ratio, I think I'm just going to go with the style of reference. So first things first, let's balance out our image. So if we scroll in on our scene from The Dark Knight, as you can see, the blacks are very true. And then if you go into the image that I've got going on here, I'm just going to pull into the rider, and there is a little bit of blue going on in the shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the temperature slider. I'm going to pull that temperature slider up until I'm seeing the blacks are more neutral. So up in the histogram here, you're obviously going to see a lot of blue push because the night scene was like more of like a blue look, like it was that true color naturally. So I mean, I'm not just going to go and like correct the whole scene because that was like the true color. I'm going for true blacks, true whites, as true as what I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep pulling this up a bit because I'm starting to see a little bit more that true black. Okay, so if I look in the skis, here, let me go out of my reference image. I'm just gonna go here. So if you look in the skis here, let me take you before. So this is before, and then this is after. So as you can see, there's more true blacks within the scene here. So before and after. Okay, so let's pull up our reference again. So I'm gonna zoom out. So that's a pretty good starting base for it. So now that we've properly color balanced our image, let's go into shaping our image. If we look at our highlights, the highlights are very similar within how bright they are. The fire is obviously really bright within the scene. We're gonna keep our headlights very similar. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to do like the basic adjustments. What I might do, you know, we could do some contrast, add a little bit of contrast because the scene obviously from The Dark Knight is extremely punchy. So let's just add a bit of contrast, dip the blacks, pull up the shadows like ever so slightly. Something like so, but as you can see, we obviously introduced a whole lot more saturation as the contrast got boosted, so let's just pull down this side a bit. So what we can do after is we can raise the saturation within the colors that we introduced back into the scene. So I'm gonna get out of the basic corrections there. I'm gonna go into the color tab, and I'm gonna start pulling more of like the blue that we're seeing within this image up in this corner here. So I wanna get this kind of blue. My blue is more of like a teal kind of look, and so I'm just gonna try pulling that. So let's go to the blue slider here. Let's go more towards like a purpley. I'm gonna go +10 here. It's starting to pull a little bit more similar. Might have to dial that back. Let me just raise up the side a bit more. Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna pull that sat a little bit back. Let me just adjust the purples. Okay, so the purples are doing a bit. If I pull it this way, you're seeing, I'm just gonna go to a full reference view. We're getting some purple up in this scene, into the snow. This is obviously extremely over exaggerated, so I'm just going to pull the hue back to about -34. I'm going to pop up. What I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower the purples as well within the saturation to about like -60. We'll leave it there. Let's pull up our reference view once again. And so from here, I think we could pull up a little bit more sat within the blue channel. And let's even go a little bit more aggressive towards the purple with that blue. So let me go even more aggressive. And somewhere about here. And then obviously we're gonna have to pull down saturation levels and actually push the hue back a bit on the purple, just so that we're getting more like that natural blue. We don't want to introduce any purple into the scene. So I think this is very similar to what we're getting. The only thing that I might be looking at is I might introduce, I think the highlights are actually extremely similar. So I'm just gonna leave that. You honestly could like darken up the image a lot. Obviously my image is a little bit brighter. This image is very dark, but as for color grading, we are very on point with this. This is why it's so crucial to have reference images, as well as to know exactly where you want your image to go. So with the knowledge of where you want to take your image and how you want it to look, all it really comes down to now is just getting to know your tools. If you want to know more about crafting an image that will pop and stand out, you can click the video on screen. Peace.